Welcome back. We are now at day 6 of the 10-day chess challenge. So you are past the halfway mark, and I hope you've already noticed some improvement in your own game and in your own thinking skills. Okay, so let's start again with some tactical exercises. In this position, it's black's turn to move. Use your calculation skill and see if you can find a tactic here for black. Pause the video to think about it. Okay, so first of all, we look at the threats and we see that white doesn't have any serious threats against us. It's always nice when your opponent doesn't have a serious threat against you, because then you have the liberty to start calculating deeper and see if you can maybe find something. However, if your opponent has a threat, you have to bear it in mind. And in these tactical puzzles that I'm showing you, the opponent often doesn't have a threat. But remember, in a real game, you have to be very sure that your opponent doesn't have a threat before you start calculating your own tactics. Okay, so first of all, the targets and the possible motives here. This bishop is already under attack, so he must be a target. This bishop is undefended, so he must be a target. This rook is already under attack by the queen and indirectly under attack by the rook. So we also see the possible motive here of when this knight moves, we will have a discovered attack between the two rooks. Okay, I don't see any other targets. Oh, of course the king is definitely a target here, because if the knight moves, we can check the king. Right, so now we can go on to the next step, which is to calculate all the checks. We've already identified as a motive that if this knight moves away, we'll have a discovered attack on the white rook on d1. So it would seem that we only have to find out where's the best check. Will we check on e2 or will we check on f3? And I think it's quite clear that this check is not right, because the white bishop will capture us. But this check sacrifices the knight, but we get a rook in exchange for it. If white recaptures, then queen takes rook check, and we won exchange in the process. By the way, if you didn't know, winning an exchange means you win a rook for a bishop or a rook for a knight. Okay, so let's move on to the second exercise. Right, back to a visual-wise exercise. I know these exercises may be a little hard if you're not used to it, but it's very powerful because it teaches your mind to get used to visualizing moves in your mind. Okay, so let's see in this position what was played. Black played the move rook to c8, and then white played the bishop to b2. Okay, so visualize those moves, the rook to c8 and the bishop to b2, and then see if you can find a tactic for black in that position. Pause the video to think about it. Okay, so first of all, we look for threats, and we see that white is threatening to capture our rook. So we have to keep in mind that we can't just do anything. We have to keep in mind that white's threatening to capture our rook. Okay, then we identify some targets. That white rook must be a target, the bishop must be a target, and this rook should also be a target because our queen is threatening it. And a motive we notice here is again the motive of an overworked piece. This queen works to protect the rook and also works to protect the bishop, which means if we play rook takes bishop, then after queen takes rook, this rook will be undefended and we can play queen takes rook and again win the exchange in the process. So let's see the solution move. Here you can see the black rook went to c8, the white bishop went to b2, and now we can play rook takes b2. If queen takes rook, then queen takes rook. Alright, let's do one more of these visualize exercises before we move on to the evaluation training exercises. Okay, so in this position it's white's turn to move. I'm going to click on start, and then you can visualize the two moves that were played in this position. So queen takes pawn, check, and black blocked the check by playing the queen to c8. Okay, so visualize that position in your mind, then use the calculation process and see if you can find a tactic for white. Okay, so First of all, we have to find the threats, and we see that black is threatening to capture our queen. So we have to take that into consideration. Targets, possible targets. The king must be a target because we can check him. The queen must be a possible target. And an important thing here is when the queen moved to c7, this rook became unprotected. So that's a very important target. Okay, and if we visualize that position in our mind and we start calculating all the checks, then we see we can exploit this king and rook with the motive, the fork motive, by playing the queen to e8 check. Checking the king and attacking the rook at the same time. Here's the solution. We can see queen e8 check, and we're winning the rook in the process. Alright, it's time for our evaluation exercises, and I'll see you there.